So I want to jump right into the conversation here, and I also want to remind our audience that as I ask questions, I'm encouraging you to ask questions too. So please do use that chat box and offer up your questions. It's a great opportunity to pick Dr. Chamow and Dr. Pluschkell's brains. So I'll go first, Dr. Chamow. I'd like to begin with you. When we first, so this is a kind of a funny question, a good way to set the conversation up. When we first spoke about this panel, when I invited you to be on it, I kind of came away from that call, and I think I acknowledged this to you when we talked. I said I got a little bit nervous when you explained to me at a very high level. You said, an effective multi-jurisdictional CMC effort in therapeutics must identify and pursue the path of most resistance. I put that in air quotes, meaning the most stringent regulatory authority. You said that's key to efficiency and success. And I came away from that comment and I thought, well, there's no point in having a conversation about it then if it's as simple as we won't have, the thing to do is follow the path of most resistance, the most stringent regulatory authority. And you check all the boxes on the way down in every other jurisdiction you're in. I thought we won't have much to discuss. Fortunately, we carried the conversation a little bit further and we realized we had plenty to discuss. But explain to us, just at that high level starting point, what you meant by that, and perhaps maybe share an example of that kind of path of most resistance approach.
Sure, happy to do that. So, what I meant by that is that we have many clients who are interested in evaluating or filing applications in different jurisdictions, and one of the first things that we want to understand is what are those jurisdictions, and help our clients to understand how their CMC requirements might differ for whatever type of product is being considered. Typically, we're looking at two jurisdictions, U.S. and EU. And when we have those two jurisdictions, the CMC requirements, although similar for the U.S. and the EU, they tend to be more stringent in the EU. And so we will focus our certain aspects of the CMC program will be tailored to the EU requirements, and if we don't know that in advance, and we focus requirements on US, it creates problems for us and for the client. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I meant by that. It's important to know at the outset where are we looking at here, identify the most stringent set of requirements and target that.
Yeah, and I, just as a quick follow-up to that, and Steffi, feel free to weigh in on this if you'd like, but we had a question, so we offer our attendees an opportunity to ask questions in the registration period, so they can offer up some thoughts on what they'd like to learn. And there was a question around this, and it kind of reminded me of the conversation that you and I had a month or so ago, Dr. Chamow. I was under the impression at a time that what you just said was kind of the de facto standard, that the FDA was sort of the gold standard, and if you checked all those boxes, you'd be in the best shape. And you corrected me to some degree on that around perhaps ATMPs and specific modalities in particular, where the EU is now recognized as the most, stringent authority or gold standard, if you will. Is that the case? I mean, is that, because there was a question about that from the audience as well. Like, well, which is generally speaking, the most stringent authority? I put you on the spot with that one. I don't want to make you, lose any friends at the FDA or the EU.
I'm not sure that I would say that EU is more stringent. I would say that there are differences. So, for example, in raw materials, grades of raw materials, you have to be sure that the grades of raw materials match the requirements of one jurisdiction versus the other. We do a lot of biologics, and one of the one of the changes that has happened recently regards a certain detergent that has been identified as an environmental issue in the EU, but not so in the US, and that's Triton X100. So, so EMA has established guidance that they're discouraging sponsors from designing processes that contain Triton X100. So again, that's just something that, you know, we need to understand so that we can effectively guide our clients in process design. If we're designing a process for the EU, then, you know, we need to pay attention to these things. If we're designing it for the US, then there's kind of a different set of priorities.
So, Steffi, I hear you. I gather you want to weigh in on that one?
No, I mean, I think this was an excellent example and a fairly recent one, right? And it is of value to you as a firm to be aware of it, because then you are in control of your strategy. I think one thing that I would add with respect to following or adhering to the most stringent agency is, I mean, first of all, I think it's an illusion that you think you can make everybody happy all the time, even with that sort of strategy. But the other piece to that is that I have experienced, having worked at a company that has a multitude of INDs and submissions and works with many different regions, is the desire internally to have as much as possible a single dossier, right? Even in the clinical stage. And so if you think about, if you're trying to look at every geographical region and agency and expectations only individually, you're going to entirely dissect your submissions, and you're going to have to then babysit them individually. To some extent, that's unavoidable, but to some extent, it's not. And that is, I think, an internal strategy to reduce the number of separate dossiers that are floating around in your data systems. I think that's a real advantage. And when resources are slim, it becomes even more valuable to think of it that way.